Janice? Yeah. Okay. Why don't you all come sit here so we won't lose time in between. Okay. Just before we get started with the first group, a couple of housekeeping details. Eric Shoemaker from Chicago has missed his flight, so he is trying to get on another, and hopefully he may get on the plane tonight, so we'll see him at the Adams Inn. And we'll probably try to squeeze in his presentation during the day tomorrow, even though he was part of the environmental change. So for this presentation, we'll just have 3 of you. And I think Evelyn will still stick to the 10-minute presentation, and then we're going to have questions afterwards. So if you could hold up the card for 2 minutes.
Sure, so I'll give you all a warning before the end of your presentation of 10 minutes, and then I'll do it again during the Q&A. So if someone's asking a question, certainly finish that up.
That's the 10, 10, 10, and then questions to all 3. So you might want to take notes now, if you have questions for the 3 presenters, because we'll be hearing 3 different people before we go to the Q&A. And then one more. This is for the Google Hang Asset Talk. We have to use it right. Someone else is
so these are performance things, which is really embarrassing, but
You have to like wait to be standing
channel your inner Beyonce. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Okay. And I guess before we start, though, we do have Quinn has an announcement.
Oh yeah. So I'm making a podcast to feature this event and all of your great work, as well as our panelists who will be featured tomorrow. So throughout the time, maybe just be thinking about what went into making your project, because what Gilford does is tries to give people a glance behind the scenes, to demystify the act of international journalism. This is something you guys have all done at this point, and so you can give people an idea of what you did. Thinking about it.
And as you know, this is the Environment and Climate Change panel, and we are, as I said, looking here, but we still are going to learn about India and Patagonia.
Hi everyone, my name is Clement. I grew up in Shoemaker Park, which is like 4 miles northeast of here. I graduated from Guilford College, North Carolina in this past August. I've been familiar with the Pulitzer Center for a while. I knew the 2 previous grantees at Guilford, with friends of mine. I know Rebecca Goodman, she worked there for a while. John Sawyer, and Steve Zachary, so my project, Damming Sacred Rivers, is about hydroelectric damming in Sikkim. Sikkim is sort of like a little stubby finger in India, right there. It was formerly its own independent kingdom until 1975, when India annexed it for kind of a military takeover. So it was military and trade significance. There's a lot of resentment towards India in Sikkim, especially among the older generation. They feel like their identity is taken. So as India grows into a burgeoning world power, they need more electricity to meet rising electrical demand. So they sort of building hydroelectric dams like all through the Himalayas within Indian territory. They either have built or are planning to build pretty much in every available river. And they're also funding projects in Nepal, this one, that one, all of it. in Sikkim, their economy is pretty much entirely dependent on the funding from the state government, so the Sikkim government, so government contracts, their government employee or government aid to the vast populations of the rural poor. And the Sikkim state government is pretty much entirely dependent on funding from the Indian central government. So the Sikkim economy is dependent on the Indian central government to function. So, and that's why Sikkim is interested in building dams throughout the region to generate revenue and provide financial autonomy from Sikkim, I mean from the Indian central government. So India's need for electricity, Sikkim's need for financial independence, and simultaneous Indian power sector reforms that allow private partnerships to come in to formally just state-run electrical functioning is what paved the way for this dam plan in Sikkim to put each of these black things as a dam. So they basically no stretch of river in Sikkim will run unaffected by dams if all of these dams are built. Currently, only a few of them are built, and probably not all of them will be built. All the dams in Sikkim are run-of-the-river dams, which are supposedly environmentally friendly. That's how they're marketed. So, like first, traditional dams, traditional hydroelectric dams. There's a dam, there's turbines in the dam, the reservoir behind the dam is collected, let out, and turns the turbines and continues on to the river, the existing riverbed. Run-of-the-river dams have a smaller reservoir area behind it. What enables them to do that is that they blast tunnels through the mountains. They redirect the water from the dams to power stations, and then redirect that to the river downstream. So you can tell where you are relative. If you're looking at the river, you can tell you where you are relative to the dam by there's a little trickle. You're downstream of the dam because the water is being diverted around you. You're upstream, sort of like sitting. It's higher, but it's kind of sitting, stagnant water. And if you're somewhere that's dams have not been, it's fast flowing, thick water that you might want to go like water rafting. So the objection to dams is one on religious grounds. Everyone in Sikkim, not everyone, most people in Sikkim are Buddhist, a mix of Buddhism with indigenous people of the Lepcha mythology that has kind of an earth-based spirituality. So Mount Kashmir, right here, the water melts, feeds the rivers, and people kind of view that as a cycle of life. So people who are, I guess, hardcore into that mythology, any damming of the river is against their sacrament and spirituality. And the next objection is it would be a threat to tourism. So the other way that Sikkim generates funding independently of the Indian central government is through ecotourism. So the idea being if you have large concrete structures and industrial buildings in the rural, pristine landscapes, people will be less interested in visiting. The other concern is ecological. So along the river where there's no bottled water, riverside ecosystems obviously will be in trouble. And because of the tunneling system, a lot of the perennial streams that were formerly used to as for agriculture and water sources are being just dripped out into the tunnels, either purposefully or non-purposefully. Sometimes they're purposely redirected, sometimes they're disappearing. The other concern, which has been ignored by the Sikkim government when they're planning and pushing through these projects, is all of Sikkim is a high seismic zone. There's still active plate tectonics underneath. And all of Himalayas is the youngest mountain range in the world. So the idea being building large concrete structures on mountains that are still moving is not a good long-term plan. And that blasting through mountains will loosen the soil and increase the damage from earthquakes when they inevitably happen. So in 2001, there was a huge earthquake in Sikkim, and areas where there had been a lot of blasting, the damage was a lot worse than it really is. A lot of my project focused on is in the wake of like after this plan was implemented, there's people formed resistance to speak out against the dam, but have been victimized by the government, so and the ruling party. So they will, however they can, make it hard for people to speak out. So the family member that works for the government, they'll transfer you to the other side of the state. If you work part-time during government contracts, you don't get the contracts anymore. If you received aid from the government, you don't get aid. So, and another thing about me reporting there is because of how politicized the issue has been, I couldn't like tell anyone that I was writing a story about dams because that's just like a hot word. And there have been other Western journalists who have been reported that they're actually too interested in. Yeah, there's secret police that are employed by the government. So if you say something, as well, like taxi drivers who be warned all the time to come and talk about what you're doing anywhere, especially taxi drivers who are trying to win. So I'm gonna play a video and let some of the people that I interviewed and spent time with.
We are people from the mountain, like we drink water from the spring water. When they start doing the underground tunneling and all the water seeps down. So it's other people also suffers a lot, The entire village will suffer.
Houses are getting damaged, sinking, landslides, all those things are happening.
They just let the water out for 2 or 3 kilometers, and then again it is stopped, again put in the tunnel. So this series of dams and tunnels and all that thing, it's like killing the river system instead.
It may bring a lot of money, but how is the money being used? The money that is generated by lives of these people, say in Krishna 5, 40 people who died, 4 people died. They sacrifice their life to make this money, but the money is wasted in Delhi. The big people, they have a very good time, But then the people who really suffer, who lose the land, we don't get anything back. In the long run, it's going to have, I don't think it's going to bring development, it's going to bring us more catastrophe. That's what I see. So we have a group of people in the villages, those who are with the power of the government, they get all the work, they get all the facilities. There are a lot of people in the villages, those once you are against the government, perceived to be against the government, you can victimize.
But if you go against the government and I'm a government person, then I tend to remove you from that list. You don't get any benefits. So that's how you play the role. But not in my case, because I'm an independent candidate.
Thank you. I'll start with quality.
And this is online on the site. So.
Yeah, this is online. I'm doing it. See the whole thing. It's interesting.
Tom, just a quick question. The footage from inside the construction, is that was yours?
Yeah, that was mine.
How'd you get permission to do that?
I went with my driver. They guard the entrances to the tunnels, but the guard was sleeping. We asked him to do it. So you're not supposed to.
We're gonna have more questions.
Hello everyone, my name is Clement. I'm an environmental studies major at Davidson and I want to step by environmental studies major. I don't have a lot of community background, but I'm really excited about it. The combination of journalism and education and bridging the gaps in sharing information about environmental issues. So I had a proposal to go to Thailand. My Pulitzer project is going to be on gold mining in northeastern Thailand this past summer. But the week I was supposed to go, there was a coup in Thailand. And day by day, we were like updating ourselves. I'm not going to go. Morning of, not going to go. I got an email from like 5 people in the middle of the night. Don't go. So, that feeling of like, I'm so excited to go somewhere, and then I'm on the phone with Clement. She's like, well, where else do you want to go? I can go anywhere I want. Like literally anywhere you want. And then you have the flip side, it's like, I don't have a plan anywhere else. I don't have any other plan. So, I'm really interested in Patagonia, and I've been following the social movement that's about hydroelectric dams in Patagonia. And what makes it really interesting is that you all know where Patagonia is. Patagonia is like the very southern part of South America. Like this whole part. It's not its own country, it's both Chile and Argentina. And that picture on the right-hand side is my travels throughout Patagonia. So, like I said, I just have a plan. Blue is boats, green is plane, red is when I rented a pickup truck and just got stick shift, explored, and talked to people. And I should add that it's winter in Patagonia. This is the southern hemisphere, and winter in Patagonia is very cold, and not a lot of people around. So I went off to explore Patagonia, and basically what the deal is it was proposed in 2004, I think, to put 5 hydroelectric dams in Patagonia to support energy to the country. Because the country looks like this. Chile is that half of the Andes Mountains, which means it's really difficult to get energy up and down the coast. You have to basically have power lines, and there's a lot of mining in the north that needs more energy, but no resources to get it because Chile is cheap. So the proposal was to put 5 hydroelectric dams, basically in places where no one lives. So it's an interesting twist on hydroelectric dam issues because you don't really have the social aspect that's like, well, you're flooding my farmland, or well, like you're ruining the sacred rivers. Really, the draw here is that this is Patagonia, and that word Patagonia means something because it's like Mecca for outdoors enthusiasts. It's the place to go. It's absolutely unbelievable. It looks like this. It looks like that to anyone who wants to see a picture of Patagonia, to anyone who wants to explore there. And that's the last place that anyone who's an environmentalist or an outdoor enthusiast wants to have disturbed by development or globalization. We want it to stay as pristine as this as possible. Now, the flip side of that is Patagonia also looks like this. If you're living in Patagonia, life is hard. It's cold. There aren't good roads to get around. We burn only wood and stoves, and so the air pollution is terrible. That's a sunny day, and there's a town just like located in this valley. You can't even, there's like ordinances out that we can't exercise during the day because the air quality is so bad. There just isn't enough energy in this region to live, to function as human beings. And so when I say there wasn't a social issue about building dams, there is a social issue that no one's paying attention to people who live here, who are trying to farm here, who are just trying to go about their daily lives and not spend the whole day under a comforter because they can't keep their house, because they have wood, or they're burning trash. So what I stumbled upon in my exploratory adventure to Patagonia was that there's a whole bunch of issues that play into this issue that's much bigger than hydroelectric. And so what I did was I interviewed a very eclectic group of people. And these are the environmentalists. These are people who say no hydroelectric dams in Patagonia. And then you have the group of people who say, but there's no real other option. There's like, you can say no hydroelectric dams, but what's the alternative? What, you want me to keep burning fossil fuels or gas? Or this is like the crux of hydroelectric
issue that everyone's discussing. And what compounds this issue is that there's someone pretty powerful in the Patagonia region. And his name is Doug Tompkins. And that name to you and I, to most people in the United States, doesn't mean it. But when you say that in Chile, people get really mad. Like they hate him. He's terrible. And he's the co-founder of North Face, who has basically bought up enough land in Chile to, it's like the size of Delaware, he owns in Chile. He's the largest individual, he's a conservationist. He's preserving this land. What he's also doing is basically, he's owning this land. He's making decisions. He has enough power in this region to change things. And so he funded a social movement against having dams in Congo. And these are some of the most controversial issues. So when we were talking earlier about how you basically start a social movement, how you like keep that sustainably on Facebook and Twitter, and how you keep a sexy topic sexy, you definitely towed that line. All of these pictures, these mountains right here, are nowhere near where there would have been hydroelectric dams. But that's pretty sexy image of Patagonia, and so people got on board. But it wasn't the people who lived in the area who got on board with this happening dams. It was people like me who were in the United States saying, "Who's those dams in Patagonia? That would be terrible." But I have no concept that that's nowhere near where there would have ever been impact. And what they also do is they frame the whole thing around power lines. So hydroelectric dams have kind of a pro-con list that's like, there is some benefit to hydroelectricity. But power lines, really, no one is on got a power line. You just don't want those benefits to happen. So they bring this whole campaign against having power lines running through Patagonia. And they got 100,000 people in the streets of Santiago to protest it, which is huge. I don't think Santiago has ever had that many people in favor of the cause. And part of it is because it had such an international draw. People in Chile were excited that there were Europeans in the United States excited about their country. And most people in that march had no idea what these things were doing, had no idea what they were against. And so then you have the local movement that is, I don't know, without Tompkins. And so there's this little band of people who think that Doug Tompkins is ruining Patagonia and he's trying to start a Jewish state. And their theories are numerous and ridiculous. But there's a lot of back and forth between who really is in the right here with the people who are living there. And if they say, I want to have hydroelectric dams, they can, or is it the billionaire from the United States who can buy his way out of whatever he wants? And so I toyed with this issue for the majority of my project. And I think what I really want to get at here is that I don't know who is, and I think I had a really interesting experience with journalism that I'm now faced with writing, translating the information that I know from going there into what I want other people to know about. What is the right answer here, or what information is worthy of people to know about dams in California, or dams in general, or starting a social media based on images that aren't true, and how angry that can make people who are on the other side, who don't have the same capital to go up against it. So I'm still working on my project. I have a lot of video footage, because Patagonia is a pretty easier place. You need to see what's going on there. You need to see the people's faces who are everything from where you live, if you're in Green County, and how many offices you spell conference with it. So I'm hoping to have that, something created with that pretty soon.
So I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I originally didn't even think that I'd be able to go because extremely happy about. But it ended up working out, and so I got to go to Kiribati, which looking at pictures of it on Google, it looks like paradise. But the reality on the ground, it's a little bit different. And right now they're facing the challenges due to rising sea level, which is linked to global warming and climate change. And so we get some people kind of the market. They go into the market with the tide every day, and then they come back. They come back at night with the tide as well. Life in Kiribati depends on the sea. People travel to town on the canoe and they come back on the canoe. There's not really much driving. People just go on the ocean for everything. Children play soccer on the beach, and most people spend most of their time on the water. But now the sea is becoming a threat in Kiribati. Kiribati is a central Pacific island. It's located in Micronesia, which is kind of right near the equator, looking between Hawaii and Fiji. It's kind of a pretty big area, but that's the best description that I can come up with because it's just right in the middle there. And yeah, people live mostly subsistence-based lifestyle off the land and the sea. So they fish on the way to work usually, and then we live off coconut, breadfruit, and taro, which are all tropical there. And most of the islands are less than 3 meters above sea level. So the surrounding sea levels are rising at a rapid rate as carbon emissions and global warming increase global temperatures. They've already integrated some villages and infiltrated drinking water wells, flooded local food sources, and scientists predict that life on the islands will become more difficult within the next 30 to 50 years, and some of the islands will become completely integrated. And this is one of the first countries facing complete integration due to climate change. My project focused on how the rising sea level is impacting life at the village level, because most of the news stories now are a little bit more focused on the global sphere, like whole country going underwater. But I wanted to see what that looked like at the individual level. I wanted to see how that was impacting families. I wanted to see how that was impacting people in the villages, because that wasn't being covered, and I was really curious. And I felt the big really hot. So I wanted to go in and see what the reality was like there. Kiribati is one of the least developed countries in the world. Most of their resources now are split between meeting people's basic needs like water, food, shelter, and sanitation. But also now they're having to split these resources with adaptation to climate change. So that means building seawalls, providing water systems that people can use, whose drinking levels have been inundated. And then they're trying to implement programs, but the resources are really strapped right now. I wanted to capture how individuals and families are adapting to these changes because they're completely out of their control. And they found that people are making most of the situation. They're coming up with innovative and creative solutions to deal with situations that there's really been much to do in terms of I don't really want to get into that part of it, but yeah. So the first story I wrote covered the launch of new rainwater tanks in a village in one of the isolated islands in the Tarawa Atoll, which is the main atoll. An atoll is just basically a fancy word for coral, the raised coral island. So this is Wariki village, and it's on the farthest end of this particular atoll. There's 33 in total. And on the day that they launched the tanks, they paraded through the town, and they woke everyone up really early, and they had a celebration. There's traditional dancing, celebration,
The people were extremely grateful to have the kids, and we built them together. And they were so grateful just to have water to drink. And this man in particular, he used to bicycle into town every day to collect 2 buckets of water for their entire day. Their daily needs for washing, drinking, and cooking. And he's 72 and they bicycle all the way into town, and now they have water drink right on their yard. So I was interviewing individuals that related to this project and seeing how the project has impacted their lives. This woman here spoke about how when the tides came up, they could not leave their house. Their houses are raised, thatched huts, and when the tide came up, they couldn't leave the house, and they couldn't get water. But now they have a tank on their property as well. So it's a little bit better, but as the sea continues to rise, it's not going to. Yes. Another main challenge is food security. So people who live in the outer islands, they survive mostly on fish, but also breadfruit, coconut, and taro, and most of those trees are dying. All the salt water is coming up onto the land and killing the trees. And so people who formerly had a subsistence-based lifestyle are now having to come up with cash to buy imported rice, flour, and they also import corned beef and other products like that. But what they don't get imports for are fruits and vegetables, because it's such an isolated island that that's pretty much impossible. I spoke with this woman, and she said that most of the changes she's noticed in her village are an increased reliance on white rice and white flour, but also people are becoming sick due to just having a diet based on these products. And she noticed that people were becoming more ill, and they were becoming sick because of the imported products. And the diabetes and hypertension and obesity rates have also increased after the introduction of these products. But the rest of my story focused on a different solution that people have come up with these products, which is community gardening. I interviewed one man, and he gave 1.5 acres of his land to start a community farm. And now all the community comes together and they work on the farm, and they work with the harvesting, and they're able to provide enough food for the village. And this is obviously a temporary solution because the people will continue to thrive, but for the time being, it's providing people with a way to earn a living and also sustain their families. Oh, this is a picture of me with the president, and I spoke with him. I really didn't think I was going to meet him, but I was at a village meeting for mayors, and he just happened to be there, and I happened to be sitting next to his security guard, and right behind him, which was crazy. I didn't even think he'd be there. And I went up to him after the meeting, and I explained to him what I was studying in the island, and he said that the biggest challenge they're facing is whether it's even worth spending money on development when they will be underwater in a few years. And that's basically the main challenge that they're facing right now, is whether it's worth it to spend money for the 30 to 50 years that they'll be there when they'll all eventually have to migrate.
Thank you. So, yes. And we try to Jim, do we need to use this?
Yes.
You can sit or stand, whatever.
What is the population of Kiribati? What language do they speak?
They have their own language, just on the islands, but they also speak English. But in some of the outer islands, they don't speak English. So I have my host mother came with me to the islands.
I have a question for Tom. I'm just curious, since you mentioned the reason the government is saying is choosing to go these games because it's a source of income, where does that money go, and has the state of the ability to afford anything? Like, are there local performance of these games who say licensing the games?
So the people who actively benefit in something from building guns are generally already wealthy landowners who are political and business connections. So that the main way that they made money was they knew the projects were going to come, they would buy land from farmers because where they knew would be needed to build the dam, and they would sell it at an negotiated rate. But like, I mean, that's what they tell people is that they're going to get jobs. And promises of general prosperity to the region. But in reality, most, like over 90% of the workers come from other places. And people in the villages supposedly don't have the skill to work at the dams. Local components of what we do.
How were you able to get in touch with people you needed? How were you able to get in touch with the people you needed to contact if you weren't able to really discuss what you were doing the project on openly?
Well, we could only discuss it behind closed doors. So I had posts. So I learned about this issue from one of my professors, and she has some connections with the activists in the region. So I would basically schedule interviews with people that I knew I could speak openly with. But there was none of my interviews were, I didn't walk them on the street asking them. So I've studied some dates.
I have a question for Katie and Tom. Did you find similarities, differences with the dam construction with St. Peter's projects?
You're sort of stuck.
No, I mean listening to these. Oh, you mean the dam?
So we actually talked about this as we were walking over here. And I think the biggest one would just be misconception that, like he was saying, that it will help people who are poor, like the promises of better roads or hospital, education, all of this is kind of, there's these small promises, but what it really is for is for mining or to be shipped somewhere else. But energy is really helping.
Also, I think the interesting difference was that in your case, the people who wanted the games were local. And in Sydenham, that was true some of the time, but generally it was local people who what I promised them. They thought a lot of money or jobs once the games came in, but there was also a smart certificate of educated young people who were trying to tell you that that's not going to happen. This is why there wasn't the external.
So were you able to interview people besides activists?
Not really. I talked to. I mean, I would talk to other people about it, but I didn't get. So yeah, that was. I wish I was able to. I tried to contact them once I got back.
I have a question for you. How do the people who live in Patagonia feel about the fact that Patagonia has this sort of cachet as almost like an international treasure that, like, it almost feels like it belongs to the whole world, but it doesn't. So like, how do they deal with sort of that issue of like, this is ours, but it's really only ours because it's like, for
Yeah, there's two pieces that I think the first is that they realize that there's been a huge boom in tourism, even just the last 10 years, as a fact. It's travel there and there's better roads, and more and more people are being adventurous of that. And the other piece is one of the guys I was talking to is starting kind of a movement to make Patagonia a country. They realize there's a lot of potential there in terms of like they want to protect it, they want to be in charge of protecting their own resources and not have governments and say that and make the country efficient. And they want access to all that tourism. They can probably make the revenue they need dams and tourism.
I had a question also about the Patagonia and specifically North Face and their role, the North Face guy. How do they respond? Two questions. One is how do they respond to the issue you raised about distortion in the advertising campaign? They're showing dams in places where they're not really planned to be. And second, how much of this is tied up with North Face as a company and their branding, as opposed to just the philanthropic initiative on the part of, is it Doug Thompson?
Yeah, so there's a couple of answers to that as well. Both Patagonia, the Montreal, and Doug Thompson in North Face. Doug Thompson sold his share in North Face. He doesn't actually run it anymore. But they both kind of market their businesses alongside this like conservationist, like it's their goal to make and I think that's also contributes to why there's such a large environmental movement, is that you have a lot of people buying Patagonia clothing, you want to protect Patagonia, it's all kind of a good thing. What is your question?
On the distortion in the ad campaign they're running, when they've been challenged on the discrepancy, misrepresentation, what has been their response?
So I asked them, and they're really proud of their distortion. They have books published on their people using images that they brought in graphic design artists to do, because that's not a grassroots. Those are products of a grassroots movement. Those are products of like company advertisements like those. I mean, that's huge scale design. And basically what they say is that all they were trying to do is get Chileans to believe that Patagonia was a part of their country as well. So they admit wholeheartedly that it was distortion, but they want you to buy into the fact that like, it could be there. Like, why would we like say no to that place and not this place? Just because no one's there doesn't mean it's not as beautiful as like the image you always see of Patagonia. There's ones on like Instagram, and I mean they pick images that are not close to Patagonia, but just like really cool art spaces and Chileans.
Has that been in the news media in Chile? Has that been an issue? Have people struck back and sort of said this is not accurate, it's not fair to represent that?
A little bit, but not as much as you would expect. People are a little bit afraid to strike back against captains and because of how it is.
So usually in the debate between conservation and development, it's not the exact this is really interesting. But I'm wondering who's funding for and how much really different, especially relative to
So the the companies that were trying to dams are from Spain and Italy, and it's just has a whole new kind of international debate over Patagonia because it's really no challenge at all involved. So they threw some money back at the at the advertising war that was happening in terms of like how this issue was being depicted, but just like ultimately couldn't stand up to how much the billboards and the signs everywhere that conservation is putting up. And so I asked it's the company called Hydra 7. And I asked them if, like, what their response was to this type of negative media. They said basically they're trying to take the high road and not play that game, which ultimately lost out their whole but also that they didn't have the resources to respond.
I have a question for Janice. Tell us a little bit more about the migration decision. People who were planning to do that, it sounds like
Yeah. So people really love their islands, and they want to stay as long as possible. And the migration issue is something they see as like in the long term, and because it's, I guess, part of the culture, and because of the way that they live, subsistence based lifestyle, they're dinner every day on the ocean. They've got fish every day. They kind of are living day to day. So something 30 years from now, they don't really see it in the near future. So when I ask people about if they were thinking of migrating, they kind of look at me really confused. I mean, some people, especially the younger generations, and especially the younger generations that are a bit more educated than some of the other people, they were very concerned and they were planning on migrating. But especially among the village elders, they wanted to stay, and having these projects like the rainwater tanks and the community gardens are especially valuable to them because they want to kind of go down with their island, I guess. I was talking with the entire group of village elders, and they were all so happy that they have this water tank because they can now think that they have good drinking water. Float there with their water. It was really funny, but I mean, it's also not really funny. But, yeah, so it's kind of some people are thinking about it, but it's not a long term. But President is trying right now.
yeah, on the international scale, is there a country that would take 100,000 people? And they
Yeah, exactly. He recently just bought how many acres of land in Fiji, and they are hesitant about saying that that's where people go when they have to migrate. Right now, it's a policy decision for food security, so they plant there and then ship food back. But Fiji is probably the most likely place where people
Does the issue with the UN refugee convention?
Yeah, recently, New Zealand immigrant from Kiribati was trying to apply for refugee status, claiming that he was a climate change refugee, and the New Zealand government said that that wouldn't pass.
Because I mean, one of the judges was saying that it just had precedent that would be untenable and
Because we become really qualified.
all three of them.